What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Moonknight, because I know you guys love the Moonknight comics. They are so good. And as always, if you need to get caught up, there'll be a link to the Moonknight playlist at the end of this video that you can click on. But what this does is it picks up in Myrmidon Prison. And Myrmidon Prison was basically kind of like the new version of the Raft, which is a prison system that's designed to hold like superpowered beings. It was actually established during the events of Devil's Reign. But what you have here is the Steve Grant persona of Marc Spector having a conversation with the Zodiac. And Zodiac is a villain that's actually been around for a while in Marvel Comics. It feels like only recently he's actually become like a major foe of Moonknight. He was there during like the first or second arc, but he's always kind of just been lingering in the background ever since. But the funny thing about this is that you have this conversation between Steve and Zodiac where in a lot of ways, Zodiac just kind of taunts with him, right? You know, he was just like, well, obviously you're not Marc Spector. And the response to Steve is, no, I mean, I'm not Marc Spector. If I were Marc Spector, you'd already be dead. You'd be dead before you ever sat down. And what he does is he just kind of like establishes control, like dominance over the situation as soon as Zodiac tries to exert his level of control, right? It's kind of Steve Grant just being like, no, do not be confused. I'm the one that holds all the cards here, right? Like I'm Steve Grant, I'm the billionaire, right? I'm the billionaire personality of Marc Spector. I've got all kinds of money. I don't really like getting my hands dirty, right? I prefer to do things elegantly. And honestly, I prefer to have somebody else do things for me, right? So here's the question that you really have to ask yourself. While you're here in this prison system, how many people here do you think want to kill you? And how much do you think I could pay them to do it, right? I could give them $10,000, $5,000. I mean, I bet Dead Zone would do it for like $1,000, right? It would cost me virtually nothing. And so he asks him, are you the Black Spectre? And that's when Zodiac just starts laughing at him, right? And it's one of these really, really cool things, right? He kind of says, and he makes a great point here. He was like, how long have we been fighting? And they really haven't been fighting all that long at all, but it's one of those where he's like, every time I committed a crime to taunt you, I would literally write my name, Zodiac, in blood and dot it with a heart, right? You are my target. You're the guy that I want. Why in the world would I take people out in an effort to get your attention and then not sign my name to it, right? Like, no, I am not the Black Spectre, right? Like, I am not that guy. But it's really interesting because he says, like, at the end of the day, right? He's like, you can tell your Black Spectre something from Zodiac. He's like, he better hope you find him before I do. Because the reality here is Zodiac is hunting for the Black Spectre, right? Not necessarily because of the fact that they've got some kind of vendetta, at least not as far as we know. There's probably some backstory there that hasn't necessarily been explained. In some way, it's just professional jealousy. It's really all it is, right? It would be like if some villain showed up in Gotham City and Batman decided to chase that villain instead of chasing the Joker would kill that villain, so Batman would go back to focusing on him. And so what you do here is you switch over to Moonknight as he's at the Midnight Mission. And of course, the Midnight Mission is basically his office. People will show up there, they'll say, hey, Moonknight, I need your help with something. And if he deems it worthy, and if he believes that there are people worth helping, then he'll go out there and help them. But what ends up happening here is he's actually meeting with a guy named 8-Ball. Now, Jeff is OG double OG in Marvel Comics. This guy's been around since forever. And what he does, really like what 8-Ball does, is he says, like, here's the thing. I never went to Black Spector, right? Because right off the bat, you can tell they're basically talking about the character of Black Spector. And the response of 8-Ball is, I didn't go to him for anything. He came to me. Now, that's one of the things to know about how Black Spector operates. Oftentimes, he will show up to somebody in a very strategic position or somebody who has something that he needs. And he will say, look, I can give you what it is that you need, but you need to do something for me in return, right? It could be this person needs money, or it could be that they need a better job, or it could be they want to have somebody killed. Whatever the case happens to be, right? Black Spector will do it, but he'll ask for something in return. And so what ended up happening with 8-Ball is he shows up here and he was like, look, I couldn't do it, man, right? Like he said, I could be part of the killing of Moonknight. And initially it appeared to me, right? Like being able to be one of the people that took out Marc Spector, that's cool. Because here's the thing to know, right? Like Moonknight fans hate it when you say this. He's basically Marvel's Batman, right? In almost every sense of the word. So killing Moonknight would be like some criminals in DC Comics killing Batman. You immediately make a name for yourself. And 8-Ball would be a guy that people would take seriously. Because unlike a lot of superheroes in Marvel Comics, Captain America, Spider-Man, Thor, depending on whether or not he's pissed off. Moonknight has no qualms with taking people out. If you piss off Marc Spector, that guy will come find you, kill you, and be home in time for cornflakes. So to make a name for yourself by killing that guy, it's gonna draw a lot of eyes. Now, it might draw some envious eyes, but they would second guess coming after you because how dangerous are you that you were able to kill Moonknight? So the response of Marc here is, take me to Black Spector, right? Take me to this guy. And so what you end up doing is picking up in what's called Hart Island, right? The only real description we get is home to New York City's 1.5 million nameless dead, right? It seems more like a homeless community than anything else. But you get this kind of back and forth between the two. Now, the relationship and the history between 8-Ball and Marc Spector kind of goes back a little bit in the sense that while Jeff has been around for a very long time, there was one point where he became a confidant, a broker of information for Moonknight, which is not uncommon, right? That's one of the ways that he functions, right? You got the three personalities. You got Marc Spector, the mercenary, you've got Steve Grant, the billionaire, and then you've got Jake Lockley, the cab driver, the guy that keeps his ear to the ground and basically reaches out to people for sources of information. 8-Ball was one of those guys. And so while you have them kind of talking back and forth a little bit, you have like 8-Ball asking Marc, like, what happened to the Mooncopter? Like, I mean, where did it go? And he's just like, I mean, I'm broke now, man. Like, I don't really have much money to do anything like that with. I couldn't keep my pilot. If you need a pilot, I can be a pilot. And the response of Moonknight's kind of funny here. He was like, you know how to pilot a helicopter? And like 8-Ball's like, are you kidding? I'm a jet propulsion engineer. He says, I designed and built a hovercraft in the shape of a ball rack and then flew it around even. Which is true, right? In the early days, in the old Sleepwalker comics back in the early 90s, like he did, man. Like he would just like fly around on a giant 8-Ball and attack people. At the time, it was ridiculously dumb. In hindsight, it was kind of cool, to be honest with you guys. Like it was kind of dope. Right? But at the end of the day, it's just because of the fact him becoming a criminal is based on the fact that when he was let go of his job for his pool and gambling addiction, there wasn't really a whole lot of entry-level jobs out there for a guy like him. So he just ended up turning to crime instead. And you get this really interesting bit of camaraderie here because he says sometimes it's just easier to be the guy everyone thinks you are, you know? And the response of Moonknight is, I do know, because everybody thinks I'm just the crazed guy with dissociative identity disorder, that I'm like the most dangerous person and the Avengers want to lock me up and they keep me on a short leash and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's just easier to be that guy. More so than that, right? And this was like the amazing moment. I think it was like in volume 1 when you had that crazy guy who was messing with people's heads. And so Moonknight just kind of allowed himself to just become the crazy, super violent guy. He ended up bringing that dude into his own mind. And he's like, this is what my mind looks like on the inside. Come and worship, and like drove the guy insane and put him in a catatonic state. Like it's just sometimes Moonknight just lets himself go, which is exactly what he's about to do. Because what happens is that as him and 8-Ball get to their destination, Black Spector comes on the intercom and you find out the whole thing was a setup. The whole thing was a trap. It was literally 8-Ball showing up to get Moonknight to come to where Black Spector was, and then he just bails on him. He just takes off. And so from there, you have Black Spector that just kind of taunts Moonknight, right? He just literally tells him these kind of wild things, right? He says, you do know what it's like, don't you, Moonknight? Is that why you came alone? Or worse than alone, with a traitor? Of course, again, that's when 8-Ball takes off. And he says, but then you've always been a cowboy, haven't you? And one of the cool things about this is that while we don't know a ton about Black Spector, there's seemingly history between him and Moonknight, right? There's history between these two guys, which is a really cool mystery that I'm excited to see unravel. But before anything can be done with Black Spector, the guy quote unquote signs off, and instead you get Rampage replacing him. Now, Rampage is a villain who is interesting, kind of, right, Stuart Clark? I mean, he's okay. He's very similar to Jigsaw, and in fact, it's very easy to confuse the two, which I think I may have done when we were covering Moonknight earlier. But this guy is a genius when it comes to technology, and he sends all these drones in, right, to start attacking Moonknight. Now, this is when you get to like this really, really cool and amazing moment, because what Stuart does is he starts talking about the nature of technology. He says, that's what it's all about. You're obsolete. Sure, you're hell on wheels when you get your hands on someone, but I put a couple $100 grand of hardware in the field and you just become a target. All that exercise, all that training, years of work, and you can't even stand up to consumer grade electronics. And so then he asks him the question, this is the reason why I love Jed McKay's Moonknight, right? Because it's just it's so amazing, right? So he's like, why the moonerangs, right? Why throw these moons? Why don't you just use a gun? And so what happens is Marc Spector ends up destroying one of the drones while he's being taunted, right? And the response of Rampage is like, you think you're better than the rest of us with your sticks and your blades? You think that gives you the moral high ground? And the response of Marc is, hardly. That's not the case at all. It's no big mystery, Clark. I don't like who I am with a gun in my hand. Neither will you. And it's just like the most Moon Knight thing to say, dude. It's just like, because I gotta be honest, man, I wish it was lines like that we got in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We didn't. It's just like, I'm Moon Knight. I kind of say some cool stuff, whatever. But like, you see him for a total of what? Like, I think 40 minutes over the course of the whole length of the show. So like, they titled the show after a character that you rarely see. Right? Hey guys, welcome to Wolverine, the TV series, where most of it focuses on Jubilee. Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense at all. And so what you have is literally Marc just like taking his time and going after Rampage. He starts taking out every single one of these drones to the point where Rampage is blind. And so you get this really funny thing where Moon Knight was hit like a couple of times, and then Black Spectre chimes in and says, that's enough of Mr. Clark for tonight, I think. And so seemingly he took the guy out, or at least removed him, right? You don't necessarily know with Black Spectre. He's very clandestine with what he says. And so saying like, that's enough of Mr. Clark could simply mean that Black Spectre just like walked up behind him, yanked him out of the chair, threw him to the ground and said, go, get out of here, go back home, or go, fix me lunch or something like that. Or it could mean that like, he just put one in his dome piece. There's no way to know, right? There's no definitive way to know. And so what you end up doing is you have Black Spectre who kind of chimes in and he says, you left Rampage broken and bleeding like you leave everyone in your wake. The dead cannot ask for revenge, but the living must be offered a chance at it. So it's most likely that Stuart Clark is dead. Again, we don't necessarily know. And he says, and he's not the only one. You remember Manslaughter Marsdale, I trust. He's very difficult to forget. Now, I forgot about Manslaughter Marsdale. This guy, man, this dude, he's OG double OG. I love Manslaughter Marsdale. Like, there's a point, Moon Knight took his eyes, bro. He took his eyes. So here's the thing, right? Like Marsdale standing over this guy, right? He was like, where's your tough talk now, Moon Man? The response of Marc Spector, son, you better come strong. Kicked him in the face, right? One-on-one, you're done, son. Then you end up getting like Man Mountain Marco, right? Like Moon Knight's like, you want some too, son? And like he gives it to him too. He's like, I got plenty to go around, man. I'm in the business of whooping ass. And business is good, right? It's one of those things, man. Like he just absolutely trashes these guys. And that's what's so funny is because not one of these guys really stand a chance against him. And as he's doing it, he's just like talking the greatest level of trash that I think anybody's ever talked, right? Like literally you have Marsdale who's like, you're faster than I thought, right? But I was a boxer, man. And the response of Marc is, me too, but now I'm a ghost. And so what you get is this moment, man, it gets ruthless, right? Like while Marsdale is dealing with Moon Knight, you have Man Mountain who's just like, keep him busy, dude. I got something for his ass. Dude revs up a chainsaw, son, right? So like, as these guys are fighting with each other, what does Moon Knight say? He was like, okay, so Manslaughter, you can't feel pain. That's cool. But the pain doesn't matter. It's not important. The pain can't kill you. Not like a cut throat. Moon Knight pulls out a moonerang and just like slices the dude's throat wide open, man. Meanwhile, you have like Man Mountain who just comes running up behind him with a chainsaw. Like Moon Knight catches it with his hands and then like turns it back on the guy and just like slashes through his shoulder, right? And so it's just like, it's nuts because he tells him, he was like, Marsdale might live, maybe you will too, but back in the Myrmidon, I made you a promise, Marco. And then from there, sets his sights on getting back to Black Spectre. Now, this is where things get really cool because you have this amazing monologue by Black Spector, right? Just like this amazing monologue. And I love the way that it's written, right? He was just like, the dead and the dying. You leave that trail behind you. You drag those ghosts behind you, which makes you so fascinating to watch. I am a student of atrocity, Marc Spector, and atrocity follows you like a faithful hound. I had my creatures engineer Plesko's death special, no mere bullet or Garrow, so I could see what happened when I killed him in front of you. I killed your shadow cabinet to bring you here, to watch you die. I can't let you live, no matter how interesting you are. Not once you picked up my trail through Sarnak after you stumbled upon Commodore Planet. but I have one more surprise for you. One more guest for our dance macabre. Tell me you remember, I went to great expense and effort to secure this guest. And you have like these kind of just like bombs, detonators around this door. And Moon Knight's like, oh God, right? The bombs detonate. And after this thing comes Waxman. Now, for those of you guys who don't know about Waxman, Waxman is arguably one of the most dangerous villains in the entirety of the Marvel Universe that nobody ever bothered to do anything interesting with. This man is a veritable one-man army. He's basically Moon Knight's version of Clayface, right? But like, imagine someone like Clayface taking on the Avengers, outside of somebody like Thor being able to channel electricity, which he may not immediately realize. Like, Waxman can copy the appearance of other people, and in fact, he used to do that in the early days. In the early days in the comics, he would take on the appearance of really attractive guys and then like go find girls. And then like when he was about to, you know, like do the thing, you know, just like, wow, like he would just lose his form and he would end up like suffocating these chicks. He ended up getting into a fight with Spider-Girl Jessica Drew and then she left him for dead. But the fact remains here, like this guy is incredibly dangerous. But what's so funny is you don't really get to see a whole lot of him. Almost immediately he kills Moon Knight. And that's the coolest thing here, right? Within 2 panels, Moon Knight is about to die. Right? This guy's literally about to die. And then you have 8-Ball that comes back to the rescue and saves Marc Spector by just like shocking this dude all over the place, right? Because at the end of the day, and this is what's so cool, and I feel like you guys are gonna love 8-Ball now. I feel like you guys are gonna be like, I wanna see him more in the Moon Knight comics. I do. I want to see 8-Ball more in the Moon Knight comics. I love him because he rescues him, and like Black Spector's losing his mind, right? He's like, you're a dead man for this, 8-Ball, right? You're dead, you know, it's just like that's, he's just screaming at this guy. But the whole rationale for why 8-Ball saved Moon Knight is he says, I didn't want to be the guy everyone thought I was anymore. I wanted to be somebody different. And so what you do here is you switch over to an epilogue. And what you get here is that at the very beginning of this story, there was a guy with red hair who was basically really met up with Black Spector. And Black Spector was going to aid him, but he was going to ask for something in return. We didn't necessarily know what it was, right? But it's this guy named Burroughs. And so Burroughs shows up to work effectively late. But when we get in there, we find out what his task was, right? This guy puts a USB drive in the computer system for the entire security, which I don't even know if you could actually do this, truth to tell, but like it takes down all the anti-air defenses. Then it loads the PA system Sarnak.mp3. And what it does here is it just drives everybody absolutely insane. There's just like this massive riot that breaks out. While that's going on, this helicopter lands on the roof of a prison. These guys come out, they spray everybody down. Zodiac ends up making his escape from this place, and he realizes Black Spector is the one that's basically behind all of this. But what ends up going on here is that Black Spector meets with the Zodiac, you know, and he was like, speak the devil's name and he shall appear. This is not Black Spector killing Zodiac. This is a prison break. He's literally getting this guy out so they can all go kill Moon Knight together. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Let me know how excited you are to see the rest of this. Make sure you click this link to the playlist to get caught up if you need to, and I will catch you all later. Peace.